Hello, it's the Toaster Party, and today I'm doing a video for the September 2020 ban list predictions. I'm going to be giving what I think is actually going to happen on the list. I don't actually think much is going to happen on the list, but if something is indeed banned or changed on the ban list, this is what I think would happen. Let's start off with the first item on the list. Jet Syncron banned. Well, I don't think that Konami can actually ban Halka Fibrax, even though I believe that Halka Fibrax is the card that probably deserves to be banned. The card that actually probably could touch on the ban list is Jet Syncron, as it is the most consistent way to get into Halka Fibrax. Do I personally think Jet Syncron is a card that is deserving of being banned? No. Is it the one that's most likely to get banned due to the sins of Halka Fibrax? Yes. It's a very cheap card that people aren't going to be extremely sad if it goes, but in the end, due to the fact that they probably aren't going to be able to attach Halka Fibrax on the list due to the fact that it was printed after the quarantine started, Jet Syncron is probably the one that's going to be put on the chopping block instead. Up next, we have Block Dragon getting banned for a similar reason to Jet Syncron, due to the fact that it's an older and cheaper card that helps out a certain unhealthy line of play. Block Dragon is probably a card that could be hit on the ban list and still allow decks like Adamancir Pater to still survive. They just wouldn't be the recursive, infinite combo threat that they are right now. And due to the fact that the card's been printed multiple times at this point, there doesn't seem to be anything that's inhibiting them from banning this card, aside from the fact that banning cards during quarantine is a bit more difficult to do. Next up, Martial Metal Marcher. Another card that is used in tandem with Halka Fibrax. Martial Metal Marcher is a card that is used often in strategies such as Synchro Eldritch and Dragon Link. I think the main reason that this one's going as well is because something in Dragon Link needs to be hit, and Dragon Link doesn't need Jet Syncron to go into Halka Fibrax. So if they're going to hit something in it, Martial Metal Marcher is another one of those cards that is old enough and it's not expensive enough that people are going to freak out over losing a copy of it, or losing their copy of this card. Up next, for the last thing that's probably getting banned, Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. Again, due to the fact that such fun cards like Union Carrier exist, this is a card that, or one of the only two cards that kind of makes that card incredibly busted. The other one being the aforementioned Block Dragon. Being able to take this card out of the hands of decks like Dragon Link and everything else that's trying to spit this thing out as fast as possible seems like a very likely target to be hit on the ban list. That and the fact that it was just reprinted, meaning that people who had were buying them for $3 when it was in its common printing for using it with Union Character now feel a bit silly, but the fact is it's another card that's older and thus is more likely to actually be hit on a potential ban list. Because again, Union Carrier is another card that was released right at the start of quarantine, so they can't actually hit it. Well, they can, it's not very likely. And while I'm going to take a quick moment here to talk about the cards that I think probably should be banned, those being Hulk and Link Cross, or in Union Character, but it's because those were released in a post-COVID world. They aren't getting banned until after the quarantine is over. Up next, Tour Guide from the Underworld, put to 3. It's a card that they've been slowly taking, or they slowly took off the list. They took it from 1 to 2, and while it helped Burning Abyss, it still doesn't make Burning Abyss the extreme meta threat that would prohibit this card from coming back to 3. That, and there's not really anything else or other deck that would be using it, so it's completely healthy for it to come back to 3, and it's probably one of the most likely cards to actually change on the list, because they've already done it once recently. Up next, Double Iris or Performative Skullcrobat Joker put to 1. Pendulums are not a good deck right now. A large part of that being the fact that they are by far the most banned deck on the Forbidden and Limited list. With, I think, somewhere close to 8 cards on the list directly responsible, or as direct response to Pendulum Magician strategy type things or Performapal strategies. This archetype needs something back, and the two that I think are most likely to come back come back onto playability is either Double Iris or Skullcrobat Joker. Skullcrobat Joker is a card that, when normal summoned, you get to add a Performapal Magician or Odd Eyes monster from your deck to hand. That's all it actually does. It has a somewhat relevant pendulum scale, but its effect prohibits you from doing anything out or pendulum anything aside from Performapal Magician or Odd Eyes monsters. So this one seems like it would be pretty fair to come back into the game to be able to sort of give the deck that is currently massively inconsistent some level of consistent play. The other one would be Double Iris Magician, which is a card that, when it's destroyed, gets to add a Pendulum Graph card from your deck to hand. A problem with this, or a problem with this card in the first place, is that initially Pendulum boards were considered to be too good. But compared to back in the day when this card was banned and what boards look like nowadays, I don't think that Time Pendulum Graph or Star Pendulum Graph are going to make Pendulum boards look too good. It's just another card that would add another level of consistency or power to the deck that it doesn't have right now. And I'm hoping that one of these two comes off the list to 1, though, in all intents and purposes, this is more of a hopeful guess than anything that's set in stone, because Konami seems to really hate pendulum decks. Up next was my random guess for this list, that being Windup Zen Mighty put to 1. This is probably the least likely thing to actually happen on this list, because this card is one of those things that just seems to be a long-standing resident of the list. I know why it's a long-standing member of the list, because of its use and ability with Windup Hunter, which allowed for toxic hand loops, but honestly, in the format right now, we already have those. We have Dragon Link, which can hand loop, Infernoble Knight, which can hand loop, Water, which hand loops. Honestly, I don't think that the Windup Hunter and Zen Mighty hand loop is going to be as good as any of those strategies, and with just one copy of Zen Mighty, I think it would still be fine. But what do I know? Well, that's all for this list, and I hope you had a fun time watching, and I hope you have a great day.